Welcome to the Prime Property Finance Podcast with Gareth Morgan and Mark Watts. This unique podcast will dive deep into all areas of property investing finance, going behind the scenes with property professionals, investors and clients. Between us, we have 35 plus years experience in property finance. The podcast has been launched to share knowledge, mindset requirements and experiences of successful investors and professionals. We aim to simplify many of the complicated areas of finance and investing and provide valuable and easy to implement tips. Keep an eye out for our new longer episodes every Tuesday and our shorter ones every Friday. A lot of investors are fascinated by property auctions, fast-moving deals, opportunities, competitive bidding, but many people still see auctions as risky, intimidating, and only for inexperienced investors. The reality is that while auctions can create incredible opportunities, they can also punish poor preparation very quickly. In today's episode, we're joined by Paul Fosh, founder of Paul Fosh Auctions, to talk about the realities of buying and selling property at auction, how the industry is involved, where investors get caught out, and how to approach auctions strategically. Let's jump in. Paul, thank you very much for joining us. We're super excited to have you on the show today. Obviously, auctions is a very hot topic in the property investor space. And, you know, it's great to have you on board on the basis that you've been around auctions for a long time. And that's not a jibe at your age by any stretch. But please give us a bit of background. A lot of people, specifically in South Wales, will have heard of you based on how long your auctions have been around for. But maybe just the wider general public, just give us a bit of background about you and your background.
Yeah, thank you very much. Excited to be here and share a few stories and some insights. I've been running Paul Fosh Auctions now for an unbelievable 25 years. And prior to that was in agency and auctions before. So a total of nearly 40 years as an estate agent / auctioneer. So I've seen a lot of things, a lot of changes, a lot of ups and downs, at least two major crashes during that time. And I've hopefully learned a little bit about the industry during that time.
Yeah, absolutely. So why do you obviously you started off in standard estate agency and then made the shift into auctions. What made you do that shift?
I even before I set up on my own, I went into auctions. I love the immediacy of it. I love the fact that you list a property, you sell it or you don't sell it, and then you move on and do another one. I think the thing that kills many estate agents are the old chestnuts that are sat on your books for months, dare I say, maybe even years. And then even when you do agree a sale, the 6 months is it average, I'm told now by agents, it takes to get a property from sale agreed through to completion, which is just absolutely bonkers. So we list a property for an auction, it's about 5 or 6 weeks away. And then, as I said, we sell 75, 80% of them. Those that don't, we sometimes relist at a cheaper price. Otherwise, if we can't agree with the seller on a cheaper price, it's gone and we start again. And that's just that rapid turnaround is just doing deals with people that want deals to be done, both sellers and buyers is what it's all about for me.
Yeah, absolutely. And do you invest yourself, Paul?
Do I invest? Absolutely, yeah. Which can be tricky because we've been number one now in Wales for 20 odd years. So of course we don't touch anything that we're looking at. So yeah, I bought at auction through London auction houses mainly. Try not to give my competitors in Wales my business. But yeah, no, I've done it. It gives me an insight actually. I think I was told, crikey, 30 odd years ago by an estate agent boss of mine, I can't remember who it was in the company that told me this, but he said every estate agent should be made to buy and sell a house every year because it's only really by having that direct experience that you can have empathy with the sellers and the buyers. I mean, I sold a house at auction, my first ever house, when I worked for a previous company, crikey, 30 years ago now. And the nerve-wracking on the day, would it achieve a reserve? And if so, how much above the reserve would it make? And that kind of stuff. Yeah, it's great. It teaches you a lot of stuff, seeing it from the other side.
Absolutely. And I think it was quite a similar thing for me as well. I was working with a lot of investors as a mortgage advisor, helping them get finance their deals. And once I started doing my own deals, the empathy is much easier. You walk in, a day in their path, in their shoes, and looking back now, I've pretty much done every type of property deal or strategy, almost, apart from ground up new build is the one that I haven't ticked off yet. Although I'm keen to do it, but not quite in this market. And so, having done that, it gives you, like you said, the experience to be able to go, well, yeah, what you need is to do this. This is a way around the system a little bit, or this is how you navigate this challenge and various bits. So it definitely does give you that great experience. So why do you think auctions are still so popular, amongst one, investors, and two, sellers?
I think sellers, we have a variety of sellers, everything from corporate sellers, including banks, building societies, and receivers who see they love the immediacy of it. They love the certainty of it, particularly if it's for property. Somebody sometimes get repossessions, for example. They've been on the market for many weeks, and they know that, okay, being given a fair shot in the open market, nothing's coming of it, get it gone quickly and put it to auction. So the immediacy of it is liked. Charities like it because correctly marketed property through auction, it can demonstrate the property's been offered to the open market and fairly offered. Different reasons for different people. So, sellers like it because it's just clear, transparent, and immediate. Buyers like it similarly, the same reason. I mean, I know investors who say they've been trying to buy a property by private treaty. They're a cash buyer, no chain. They're buying an empty property, and it still takes 3-4 months because of just the way the whole conveyancing system in the UK is set up. So it suits buyers and sellers for mainly the same reasons, i.e. the immediacy and transparency, I think.
Yeah, absolutely agree. And I think some of the questions that we get asked is by investors, I don't want to buy at auction. I've seen a deal, but I don't want to buy at auction. Auctions are risky. Well, they can be risky if you don't do your homework, but they actually, as you mentioned, they're a great place. And one of the key things that we say to people is, well, the first question you have to ask yourself is, why is the property at auction? And, how many of those you've just mentioned there now? It's a repossession, it's a charity. They need to advertise with fairness and openness and transparency to the open market, and they want certainty of a sale. Does that make it risky? I don't think so. Is there something underlying with that property? Potentially, which could make it risky. And if you don't then go away and do your homework, then you might open yourself up to that risk. But with the investor hat on, as you say, the certainty of being able to go, and a lot of investors we work with will say, I want to buy 3 properties this year. I want to buy 10 properties this year. I want to buy 30 properties this year. And the only way you can actually do that, not the only way, but one of the ways you can guarantee buying properties is going to auction, isn't it? Because you can go, well, I'll buy 1 a month at these auctions. Now, there'll be times when you don't get the price, and this is something we'll have a chat about in a moment as to where we are in the market cycle. But it's understanding that risk around why is the property at auction? Well, one, it's one of these corporate sales, or potentially there's a problem with the property. And once you understand what that problem is, then you can work out whether or not that problem is fixable at the end of the day, isn't it? Is it land? Is it a derelict property? Is there a legal issue? Is there a structural issue? Is there a short lease? Is it it's unmortgageable because it doesn't have a working kitchen or bathroom or whatever that may be? And for the majority of those questions, they can be fixed. Now, some of those can take a long time to fix. Some of those can be a paper exercise, can't they, in terms of fixing? So you could buy something today and make it mortgageable tomorrow, just by a paper exercise. So it's just understanding what the risk is and how easy and how costly and how long it will take to fix those before you know whether you've got a deal or not, isn't it? So yeah, is it risky? Yes, if you don't do the due diligence. And I know that's something that you're quite keen on as well from a buyer's perspective, is to make sure that they do the due diligence. What do you see from your perspective? What are some of the mistakes that investors make when buying at auction?
I think one of the biggest frustrations is, so we can see people's activity at the back end of the website. Everything's online now. So we have to get people to register, to sign our terms and conditions. And we can see when they've downloaded the legal pack. So a legal pack might typically consist of 6, 8, 10, 12 different documents. And we actively encourage everybody to download the legal pack and ideally get their solicitor to take a look at it. We'll come on to perhaps the practicalities of that. But the frustration is when people buy a property, they're bidding on a property, and they've not even looked at the legal pack. So they're bidding on it, assuming everything's okay. And then randomly, I think statistics from EIG, so our platform is produced and run by a company called EIG, Essential Information Group, and they provide the auction platform for 90% of auctioneers in the UK. And stats they produce, I think it's between 50 and 60% of people download the legal pack only after they bought the property. Well, if you can do it after you bought it, why not download it beforehand? It's not difficult to download a legal pack. It's literally a click of a button to download the document and look at it. And if you don't know what you're looking at, that's fine. We're not all lawyers, or most of us aren't lawyers. And interestingly, although I know my way around a legal pack, I've looked at thousands of legal packs in my time. Whenever I buy a property or bid on a property at auction, I will still run that legal pack past my solicitor. I might spot a couple of things that, can you advise me on X, Y, and Z? Anything else you spot? They'll have a cursory glance here. No problem at all, Paul. You're right with this. Don't worry about that. That's fine. And so on. Just run it by a solicitor. Now, if you haven't got a solicitor, and we spoke earlier on that it can cost £200-300 to get a solicitor to check a legal pack. And if you're potentially bidding on 3 or 4 properties, it can be a very costly business. So one of the beauties of AI is people are harnessing AI to use various tools. And there's a company called DocuWise, and they are appearing on more and more auctioneers' platforms. We've just allowed them to start listing on our platform. We get nothing from it, but it's an AI tool. It's an enhanced AI tool. And if you pay, I think it's £70 to them, their tool will analyse a legal pack for you and give you a brief summary of it, whether it's freehold, leasehold, length of the lease, what costs you'll be incurring, and that kind of stuff. All the kind of relevant pertinent information. The special conditions in a legal pack should tell you all the nasties and anything you need to know about. But even when people do download parts of the legal pack, they often don't bother downloading the special conditions. And that's where the conditions that are special to the property are.
All the added fees are.
You will pay back the seller £20,000 towards his retirement fund. They could do that, and you'd be obliged to do that. And if you haven't looked at special conditions, you could miss that.
Yeah, I've seen those. They're horrible, aren't they? And it's just easy. It's a one-liner.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, many years ago, we're talking probably 20 years ago now, we sold, I think we sold it for the local authority, a house in Rumney, Gwent, and it had been vacant for, I think, 5 years. Front wall was bowing out, in itself not insurmountable. But because of that, the pavement was closed. The council put up traffic lights to create a footpath into the road. And they were charging the owner of the property the ongoing cost of this. And I think they enforced a sale in the end, and the buyer had to reimburse the council the cost of 5 years traffic lights. And the cost was about £20,000. And the property was worth no more than that at that time. We're talking 20 years ago. It was a wreck of a house. And I think somebody paid £15,000 for it, a couple of grand, perhaps cheaper than you might have done, but then were gobsmacked by the fact they had paid £20,000 for it. Completely and utterly disclosed and open in the legal pack. If they're only bothered to have a look at the legal pack. So it's like, come on, guys, help yourselves. If you're investing money, sometimes tens, or not sometimes tens, always tens, sometimes hundreds of thousands of pounds in a purchase, do some background checks.
Yeah, and one of the pushbacks that we get, especially from earlier investors, when maybe they're looking to buy their first property, is they don't want to spend the cost on a solicitor to check the legal pack. They don't want to have a survey done on the property. And I'm thinking to myself, well, and I say this to them, yes, I agree. You don't want to, part with your hard-earned cash on the basis, one, you might find something that you're told, don't buy it. Or two, you end up doing it, you bid and you're unsuccessful. Unfortunately, that's just a cost of doing business. The flip side of that is, if you don't do it, then it's going to cost you. It could cost you, instead of a few £100, it could cost you thousands of pounds. We had an example recently where a client came to us. They'd won the auction. They'd gone direct through to one of the largest short-term finance providers in the UK, you probably would know, and they did an automated valuation on the property. Nothing was picked up until the day of completion, and it turned out that the property had a 35-year lease. And because the surveyor hadn't picked it up because there was no survey, and it was done right at the last minute, and then all of a sudden they're scrambling. The lender withdrew the offer, and they left. I think there was about 4 days left to complete, and all of a sudden they're scratching around to try and sort it out. We did manage to sort it out, but that's a huge issue that could have just been overcome had they had the legal pack checked out. So it's these examples, and that probably leads me into another question that I have for you, which is a lot around the notice of completion, how many days you have to complete, for instance. So would you like to just kind of give us a brief indication of how, there are varying days of completion and what that looks like, and then we'll talk a little bit about the notice and things.
Absolutely. So traditionally, an auction sale on the night of the auction or day of the auction, when the bidding closes, if you've met reserve, contracts are legally exchanged at that point. You're legally bound, you're tied in, 10% deposit is due. Most auctioneers will hold funds so that some money's already taken, and then you pay a top up to make that up to 10%. Completion timescale is usually a month or 28 days, 4 weeks afterwards. According to the Royal Institution of Chartered Surveyors, the standard is 20 working days, but it amounts to 4 weeks. Now, that can be varied. It can be 21 days. A lot of lenders have 21 days. They want to get the money in sooner. Some people will even put 14 days. Ultimately, that completion period could be whatever this seller wants, but most sellers wouldn't have it too short because, of course, they ultimately want their property to complete, so they have a reasonable timescale. So anything from 14 days to 28 days, there'll be longer periods of time. We sell properties for housing associations and or Welsh Government, and they have an open-ended completion, which is a timescale, or as long as it takes the Secretary of State for Wales to sign it off. That could be 3 months, could be 6. I've had people waiting 6 months to complete a purchase. So that's all contained in the special conditions. So it will vary. Again, all you've got to do is download the special conditions and read through them. And this is where I think I'd say to people, just invest a bit of time and effort. If you don't know what you're looking at, just email the auctioneer, whether it's us or whether it's another auction house, and ask some simple questions. What costs are incurred on top of the purchase price? What is the completion? If you can't see it, what's the completion rate? Is it free or anything like that? And a good auctioneer should do their damnedest to reply to you and say, we might take a bit of breath, but yeah, okay, fine. You can find all this information in special conditions, but so I suppose I get a little bit frustrated sometimes when people don't put the effort in. If you're spending, our average sale price now is about £120,000. We have a lot of values properties which bring the average down, but so if you're buying a house at an average price of £100,000, surely that warrants a few hours of your time to investigate that legal pack.
Yeah, absolutely. And like you said, there's so many answers in there. And if you are aware of something and that it isn't in there, then you are allowed to go back and ask further questions of yourselves and say, look, I'm concerned about this. I noticed that the property, there was an issue with here, or I noticed, I've through my other due diligence, but I can't see anything in the legal pack. And what's your thoughts? And you say, oh, actually, yeah, the vendor's aware there's another document. Keep an eye out, and there'll be some more documents added at a later date, or we're aware that there's a report missing, or whatever it may be. And then they might have a knockweed plan in place or something that hasn't been added to the legal pack. But yes, that's there. Or no, there isn't one, and crack on and do. The property's got knockweed. There's no plan in place. Make your offer based on having to put one in place,
Exactly. And there might be a property that we've listed early January that comes up for sale in March, and we weren't aware that there's knockweed there, and somebody spots it, and we'll thank you for letting us know, and we'll, you're right, there does appear to be knockweed there. Hey, sellers, there's knockweed, as you say, but it's just a conversation. We'll never hide anything. There'll be times when we're unaware of stuff. There have been times potentially when sellers have either deliberately or inadvertently, stuff's not been clear and transparent. But if people spot things, ask us, and we'll provide that transparency. It's in our interest to do it. We haven't been around for 25 years without being, that transparent person. Ultimately, we don't. I want to make the whole auction process clear and transparent and available to all, really. And we will help people wherever we can to build up long-term relationships so that people come back to us again and again and again, buying and then ultimately selling through us over the years.
Yeah, that it's very helpful. And if it is clear and transparent, like you said, people will keep coming back, won't they? And it works, and if you've sold and bought at auction and you understand the process and you know how powerful it can be. I just want to go back onto the point around the 28. So let's say it's based on the Rick's guide of a 28-day completion. If just to kind of help educate people on what happens. So I win the property and it's the 11th of May and we get, the hammer goes down. I've got 28 days to complete. As we go through the process, I've exchanged contracts. As we go through the process and we are starting to near completion, and I and my solicitors are in a place where we don't think we are going to be in a place to complete, maybe because I need finance, maybe bridging finance, short-term finance. Unlikely I'll be getting a mortgage on that time frame. So I've got bridging finance I'm trying to arrange, but it's not going to happen. Can you just talk us through what the options are?
I think the first thing I would say to anybody is just communicate. Get your solicitor to speak to the other side and say, we're going to be hard-pressed to complete on time. Usually, nearly always, the seller solicitor will say, okay, what timescale are you looking at? Again, be honest, be open, say, and it'd be solicitor to solicitor, so they could probably badmouth their client. Bloody idiot's taking a long time to get this sorted. He's only come to me now. It's going to take him another 2 weeks, 3 weeks, whatever. And I think if you communicate that from day one, the seller solicitor is going to be far more likely to oblige rather than you get to the day of completion and say, sorry, can't complete. Well, when are you looking to complete? Well, not for another couple of weeks. Well, you could have told us, could have given us notice a week or two ago. So I'd always say communicate or get your solicitor to communicate at the earliest possible opportunity. And if you do that, you'll be far more likely to receive a positive response from them.
I'm smirking purely because the jeopardy that I've had on this conversation is just, every time I don't know what the right answer is, but it's what you do, because sometimes you can find out early on, I know I'm not going to complete on time. Do I run the risk of asking for an extension early on the base and being open and transparent and hoping that they will engage with us and extend? Or by doing that, you're alerting them to the fact that you're not going to complete on time, and then they will serve you notice on the day of completion. So just so that people are aware, can you just explain how the notice element works?
Absolutely. So if completion doesn't take place on the set day at the same time, which is normally 12 noon on the completion day, there will be a notice to complete period. And that's normally 7 working days. I think it's the RICS default. Can vary, it can be varied within the special conditions. So if you don't complete on time, it's up to the discretion of the seller and their solicitor, but they are liable to serve a notice to complete. That gives you a formal notice that your time is ticking for you to make that, come up with the money and complete the purchase. Now, let's say it's 7 working days. You've got those 7 working days to come up with the money. If you haven't come up with all of the completion monies by the end of that notice to complete period, they can rescind the contract. They can remove the contract. They can then also sue you for the balance. They can reoffer the property. And if it sells for a lesser amount, they can sue you for the difference and their increased costs. So the penalties for not completing on time can be pretty onerous. More often than not, most sellers will accept taking your 10% and letting you walk away, but it's by no means a guarantee. You should never think, oh, if I pay this, I would want to lose their 10% anyway. But that could be the minimum of it. It could be a lot worse than that. It's an interesting point you make, because I'd always advise openness, but there could be a situation where maybe the seller is hardball and they are willing to rescind the contract and just reoffer it. And they think, well, I'll keep your 10%, great. I'll reoffer it again and maybe I'll get the same amount the second time round, or maybe even more. So it probably is a fine line, how much you communicate. But if you know you're definitely not going to complete on time, I suspect those sellers that will play hardball would probably play hardball whether you got to completion or not.
Not,
So,
yeah. I guess some sellers will mandate their solicitors to issue the notice on the 28th day, regardless of any comms either way. So I guess by speaking to the auctioneer and the solicitors up front early in the process, you may, because you've experience of working with that vendor, have an idea of how they're likely to treat a request for an extension.
The conveyancing world is not that big a world, I suppose, a bit like the world of a state agency in South Wales. Kind of people know other people, and a lot of the conveyancers know each other, so they will know whether it's worth giving that firm heads up, just to let you know, and the solicitors will work with each other, and maybe other firms where they know, no, I'll keep my head down on this one and just try and push it through as close to the timescale as you possibly can. But yeah, horses for courses, I guess.
Yeah, okay, so that's interesting. So, but if they don't, on the 28th day, if they don't issue a notice, what happens then? If they don't issue a notice, you're on free time, essentially. You can continue to do your groundwork and get stuff done. As if ever I'm advising a seller, I will always say, issue the notice to complete on the 28 days. You don't have to enforce it, because the notice to complete can come to an end, but you can still give the purchaser extra time. But if you've issued the notice to complete, at least the seller is then in control. But if you haven't issued the notice to complete, and then you lose a week or 2 weeks, you then have to still wait the other 7 working days or whatever. So you may as well issue a notice to complete from day one, and then the ball is in the court of the purchaser to hopefully crack on. Yeah. Yeah. Okay, that's interesting. Yeah. So that's one of the concerns that we see quite often is, I don't know if we'll be able to complete within the 28 days. Well, yes, 28 days is the minimum as standard. However, if you don't get the notice, you get maybe another week plus then the additional 7 working days of the notice. So, in most cases, you have a minimum of 28 plus 7 in terms of completion, isn't it? So it is a little bit more time than what you anticipate, and it is not quite as adverse. We are seeing a lot of those extensions out to sort of 56 days. And I think that's possibly to do more with the online auctions, where that is it's giving the seller certainty, but it's also allowing the buyer to get a mortgage, isn't it? They're a bit more of a traditional purchase, but with a bit of a fixed ended. Is that what you're seeing? Yeah, those conditional sales. So because our traditional auctions are online, so the online conditional sales where the buyer puts down a reservation fee and has 56 days, you say, then to exchange and complete. There are fors and against, really. I see too many properties going to those conditional auctions. They shouldn't really. Choosing my words carefully. What's the motivation for putting those properties to those auctions? It's often the agent seeing the pound signs, because the reservation fees are very big. We do offer conditional auctions in limited cases, but we choose our policy is to have much lower reservation fees. So we're not driven by the monetary, we're just driven by what suits the seller or the buyer. So I often, in our neck of the woods, will say, well, if it's a doer-upper and they're on the valley, needs everything doing to it, but that's traditional all day long. 3-bedroom detached family house in Rogerstone that's going to be probably bought by an owner-occupier. Well, that's not really traditional auction type property, but it may well suit the modern method of auction or conditional auction style, where somebody puts a reservation fee down, they've got 56 days. So it should be driven by the property, really, rather than what's going to earn the agent with bigger fees. And what's suitable for the seller. And we see a lot of these modern method of auctions, and so just to be clear, that's not really your part of the market, is it? But we are seeing an increase in these now, and people are sending us, so I want to buy this property, but it's a kind of auction, I don't get it. There's a big reservation fee, and can I add that to the mortgage? And well, it's a big fee which they've got to pay on top of the deposit, and it's restricting. You're probably restricting the amount of buyers to that property because of the additional fees. A lot of people get put off by them. The buyers that we speak to, first-time buyers, are going, well, I want the house, but I want to pay all that money towards it, so it just doesn't quite add up. Yeah, if you're a first-time buyer, you can just about scrape together a 10% deposit, but not another 5% on top of that, or £6,000, whatever those fees are. And
And if you're a buy-to-let investor, you want to put down 25%, again, it's another 5%. Just can make the difference between you not being able to go ahead.
Plus stamp duty on top of that as well, isn't it? So it's challenging. Just dropping back again then to this risk of non-completion. So the 28 days have passed. You've been served notice. What are you seeing in regards to how many of those have you seen? Where the vendors pulled it back and people haven't completed.
We're seeing more and more of late.
Right. Okay.
Partly because of the rise of some of the sellers in the market at the moment, people trading properties, and they probably approach it in a more kind of bullish kind of manner. Well, if you don't complete on time, fine, we'll keep the deposit and we'll reoffer it. Whereas our more traditional sellers in years gone by would give a bit of extra time, a bit of grace, and even our corporate clients will tend to just no, we'll give you a few more days. We'll charge you interest, but we'll give you a few more days. So yeah, I think more than ever, we're finding contracts are being pulled where people are failing to complete on time. And in some cases, because some of these properties aren't straightforward, buyers are just walking away and they're cursing themselves and losing a 10% deposit, but they're walking away at a choice.
And why the sudden rise then from a buyer's perspective, would you say?
I think it's something more of the properties that are coming to auction that are seeming like very good buys because they're guided very cheaply to generate interest, and people get lured into thinking that's really cheap, I'm going to have a go at that. I always think of being an auctioneer a bit like fishing. It's our job to put the bait out, then we get the nibbles, and we reel the people in. All completely legitimate, all above board ultimately, but as long as the guide price, that we have a rule we're governed by, which is the reserve price must always be no more or less than 10% of the guide price. So something that's guided at £100,000 could be reserved at 90, or could be reserved at 110, or anything in between. But if the property is guided very cheaply to generate the interest, that can happen. Once people have made a bid on it and then they've been outbid, they keep going and they keep going and they keep going. And at that point, we're spectators. We're just watching it and thinking, what's wrong with you? Stop. Why are you still bidding? Because they get carried away. And they can't bear to have it pulled away from them. Even the term winning a property at auction, ultimately, I've never used that term. Have you chosen to buy or have you chosen to pull out? Because I used to talk about people who would be in scenarios where they're telling all the mates down the pub on a Friday, yeah, I'm going to Fosh's auction next week. I'm going to got a couple of properties, that and the other. And they didn't like coming away empty-handed because it would almost be a slight on their character. I got outbid on 3 properties. I'm not enough of a human being to have succeeded in buying these properties. But ultimately, I doff my cap to the people who stop bidding sometimes because they're making the wise decision. I had a limit of 150,000. Yeah, I bid up to 152. Just one more bid didn't hurt me. And then I decided, no, they can have it. And the bidding went to 180. They're mad, and we get these scenarios. But I genuinely would, as I say, have respect for people who have a limit, maybe have 1 or 2 bids beyond, but nothing like that. But then stop bidding and are comfortable to stop bidding because they know their limit.
Yeah, and this has been a nice segue into the sort of what I would call now more in your space, traditional auctions versus online auctions, the move from in the room auctions to online. And I know obviously COVID was a big shift. I know there was a bit of a shift happening prior to with people voting in, bidding in and things, proxies and various things. But I think that full shift, and do you see it going back at all into in-room bidding?
No, never. I mean, 1 or 2 auctioneers, particularly in London, are offering room sales. I don't understand it. So you have an auctioneer literally standing in front of a rostrum, commenting on bids that are coming in online with the bid on telephone, and a room that seats hundreds of people with literally half a dozen people in there. I am giving a commentary on our auction, and we're increasingly doing that. We're trialing different platforms to do that, and we'll be on Facebook Live and on something called Twitch, which I only come across recently, talking about, well, that's going crazy, or why is that? And just giving a running commentary, but I won't be pretending I'm controlling the bids. Why will we never be back in the room? We can control things so much better online. So we can talk to our sellers right up until the second the bidding closes. when I was an auctioneer on the rostrum in a room in the hotel in Cardiff, and we'd have 300 people in the room, great numbers of people in the room, room was crowded out. I'd have all my properties listed with their reserves, and I'd have the people in the room in front of me, the odd person on telephone, or the odd person bidding online. But if they weren't there in the room or hadn't registered bid online, I couldn't do anything about them. If the reserve price was a fraction too high, I couldn't do anything about it. Take the scenario now where bidding is open for 48 hours before the bidding closes. So it opens on a Tuesday at midday. If bidding's a bit slow, I can phone the seller and say, it is a bit slow. I did tell you the reserve price should have been 10 grand lower. Can we reduce the reserve price, please? We can have these dynamic conversations with the sellers at that time. We've had situations where the lot is due to close in 30 seconds and we've got 3 or 4 bidders, but nobody's bid for 2 hours and 2 or 3 of them have gone offline. And we know we've got one person, and I can phone and say, John, I can see you're watching this. We've got literally several bidders on this. We're closing in 20 seconds time now. If you make one more bid, it'll be yours. Now, don't if you don't want to, but I'm going to be on the phone to you and all the other parties tomorrow to get best and finals. If you want to get it now, next bid will secure this. And we've actually done deals like that. They make a bid, and it's working in everybody's interest. It's working in the seller's interest to get a property over the line. It's working in the buyer's interest to get the deal done. So that level of being dynamic during that 48 hours is something you can never, ever do, however good an auctioneer you are on a rostrum. And I thought I would hate online, and I actually think it's just the best thing could ever happen.
Yeah, that's interesting. I haven't really considered it from a seller's perspective before. I've only just looked at it with a buyer's hat on. And, the one thing I used, it was frustrating because you've got to go to the room. However, one of the biggest things, what you mentioned earlier, is if you're keen to buy at auction, it's looking at what options are available. And it's not necessarily, if you're a professional investor, you're not going to just bid on one property generally. If you're going to an auction with 60 lots, you'll probably have your eye on and done your due diligence on maybe 4 or 5 or maybe more. And then because the professional investors will have kind of highlighted the ones they know, they'll know their areas, they know the cost of those refurbs, and then they'll say, well, minimum I'll pay, and they'll just have the notes on their book saying, well, I'll pay that for that one, that for that one, and then just keep an eye on. And that's where you've got to be in it to win it. That's that saying comes from, isn't it? Where you're there and you're looking around going, nobody else is bidding on this one. I'll have it. And you'll buy the one you didn't want, and you'll get outbid, ridiculously on the one you did want. But that's the professional element, and I feel that's come away a little bit because I've been at auctions and I bid and I've been outbid and it's gone 100 grand over what I thought it would, and then other ones I've just gone past and I've gone, right, I'm out. And then other times, the first time I saw it, the auctioneer was like, it was going up and up, and I was thinking, there's no one bidding on this. But it's going up all the time. He's bouncing it off the wall. You understand what that is then. And you go, all right, I'll have it. And then you win something and there's nobody else. And you're like, all right, okay. But you can see, you could see who the characters are. If you know them in your local area, all right, well, he's bidding. Well, there's no point me bidding because he'll just bid and pay whatever, just be ego bidding and just to say that they won it or whatever. And yeah, you just kind of get the experience of being in the room and knowing the characters involved. All of that's gone away now, isn't it? And so it's become the eBay auction type scenario where you're just clicking, you've been outbid, and this is all the psychology around it again then, isn't it? Where, I've been outbid, I need to go again. And how do you bring those limits in, and when you know enough is enough?
The running order used to be really critical when we were in the room, because as an auctioneer, you'd want to keep the atmosphere really high. And if you had a situation where the market was a bit tough, when you had a lot doesn't sell, a second lot didn't sell, a third lot didn't sell, you'd feel the whole atmosphere. And you'd be having a real cracking lot there, say, who's going to start me this? Expecting 5 hands to go up. And everybody all of a sudden starts doing that. And as an auctioneer, we used to earn our money by lifting the room back up. But you were saying about buying a lot at the end of the auction. We'd often have, if we had a real grotty, horrible, disgusting lot, we'd often stick them at the end, because the people that had been unsuccessful in their previous lots would buy this real dog of a property at the end, maybe with a back wall falling down, or, where a tenant had kept their dog inside and the whole house was impregnated with dog feces and whatever. and it's going to cost, tens of thousands of pounds to rectify. So we split those at the end for the people that hadn't done their due diligence. And some people, got caught out of that. But again, perfectly legitimate, but buyer beware.
Buyer beware, absolutely, yeah. Yeah, interesting. So you don't see that shift. Anything else that you see, are people still doing this, the psychology of the bidding, keep going on the online version now?
I think many try, but the platform, if you've bid on the online platforms, they're all virtually the same as eBay with one or two minor differences. You can put a proxy bid in the same way as you do on eBay. So if you come in as a first bid and put a really high bid, and you'll be taken straight to reserve, and then your higher bids will be kept as proxies. The one big difference, and I always say to people, we're selling real estate, not secondhand Levi's. That is, there's no sniping. So if you make a bid with 30 seconds or less to go, the bidding clock goes back up to 30 seconds. The auctioneer will set the time frame. Someone will have a minute, someone will have 15 seconds. We choose 30 seconds. So there's no point making a last second bid. Some still try and do it, and I think you do it tactically with just 2 or 3 seconds to go, and it can be frustrating as an auctioneer watching. You think, okay, it's got, okay, another 30 seconds. Come on, bid a bit quicker next time, should a bit quicker. So you've got two fires, one's going straight away, and the other's leaving it like 28 seconds, all the way down to like 2 seconds, and then they're going again, and I can drag out the auction for ages. They perhaps think it's a tactic. Whether it's beneficial, who knows?
Well, I'm laughing because I've also played that game as well. So during lockdown, we tried to buy a house for ourselves, actually, a residential house. And it was the first online auction I've been involved in, and not knowing, it was quite new at the time. And they said, all right, I'll pip them at the post. And I just kept, another minute. And that minute just felt like forever. And then you're like, and again. And you're like, this is horrible. And you don't know who you're up against, and how far do you take it? And, we were in lockdown, obviously, this was in April, I think, and it just kicked off. You didn't know how long the uncertainty was going to go on for. So,
because, and if you were in the room, you'd be looking at them, you'd be staring them out thinking, how keen are you? And that's when, we'd have people with it's not an auction catalogue, but it's, they just literally do that. And then the catalogue up. I'm going to keep bidding. 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 And that could put others off, could almost encourage others to bid. I don't know. Or they'd throw bids at me, which were random bids, just to try and, instead of going, so I'm asking for another 1,000, they say another 10,000 or whatever, just to really try and knock the other person out of the water.
Yeah.
Different people have different tactics. I don't think anybody ever knows which was the most successful, but we just like to try it over.
No, it's very interesting. And I just love the psychology of it all, really. But it's good. So I think that's pretty much covered off the majority of the bits that I'd had in. I think one of the one I wanted to discuss was just general market sentiment. Obviously you alluded a little bit to a surprising number of increases of people not completing on the properties, which I'm quite surprised at. My first take on that potentially is people haven't done the numbers. Because a lot of the stuff that we see is not good. The biggest reason for that, and I harp on about this a lot on this podcast, is the cost of renovations. The cost, the inflation around labour and materials are just phenomenal. And if people going, I've done some flips, or I've done some BRRs, 10 years ago, I can, turn the house around for 15K. And it's just impossible, to do a full refurb for that kind of figure. So is that the same thing were those the reasons you think?
Probably that, or it's more down to the fact that the properties where people are failing are the properties that are being offered by traders, and they're not necessarily clean properties in every case. So that's where we'd urge everybody to do their due diligence. There's an assumption by some people, well, it's a house, so it should be okay, shouldn't it? Whereas, you wouldn't buy a second-hand car without going to look at it, or most of us wouldn't. If you're spending 50 grand on a second-hand car, you'd surely go and have a look at it first. Maybe even get the RSU or VA to do a road check on it, or you'd buy it from a main dealer that would come with 3 months warranty or whatever, So why would you spend 150 grand, 200 grand on a house without often viewing it? Less than a third of the houses we sell have people view them. and over half people don't look at the legal pack beforehand. I mean, it's just bonkers.
It is bonkers.
Absolutely bonkers.
Just for the listeners there, you mentioned traders. Can you explain a little bit about how trading works?
Yeah, so trading's always happened. Right back in the day, I remember one of the earliest traders we used to act for 20 odd years ago. And it was before there was so much information available online, but perhaps buying from a big London auction house. I remember once he bought a house in Cwmbran and had a closing order on it, so couldn't be occupied, and almost a demolition order on it. It was offered for the auctioneer by the auctioneer. It was peanuts. He bought it having done a tiny bit of research to realise that the previous occupants had knocked through the lounge and the dining room, and the local authority weren't happy with the lintel that was put in there. So if you corrected that lintel, put a proper lintel in there, the house was fully habitable. And he bought it and he sold it for £50,000 and made himself 40 odd grand in literally a couple of months. So that's the kind of trade. You buy one place, you maybe add value as he did, or you maybe just buy it if you think the auction hasn't done a very good job marketing it. You buy it maybe post-auction and knock down price, make a silly offer, seller accepts it, you then bring it to another auctioneer who you think can do a better job. But it can also be splitting things up. So we've sold situations where somebody's bought a farm without buildings, farmhouse, barns and so on, and they carve it up. So like an asset stripping. So they're, again, perfectly legitimate and so on. So these are things that traders might do. And you just need to make sure everything is being done appropriately. Now, where we're aware something's not appropriate, we will try and hold the seller to account. But we are not lawyers ourselves. And so, we are at the mercy of solicitors and so on. So it's really a case of just making sure you are confident that everything is legitimate, above board, been done correctly. And if you're not, just don't bid. Really, just don't bid if you're not sure.
So something that's just popped to my mind around that scenario, which we've had issues with in the past, is when a property's been traded, it's being sold by the property and that person isn't showing on land registry as the owner. Have you seen a lot of that in experience and causing, and how would that impact? So let's say you're going to trying to get lending, for instance.
Yeah, so we sell properties for a lot of cash buyers. So they will advertise and people say, we're going through matrimonial or whatever. We don't want to have to sell it to an estate agent. Yet buy a house, offer set 30% below market value just so it can get gone. They'll then come to us and we'll sell it for them. But because their model is built around speed, they won't have had full registration conducted already with land registry. So as long as there is evidence that they have bought it and it's being registered with land registry, so you produce a transfer document. There should be a transfer document in the legal pack, which shows that, yes, the house is in the name of Mr. and Mrs. Jones, but the seller is such and such a company limited. And there's a transfer there saying such and such a company limited bought it from Mr. and Mrs. Jones. It's now going through registration. Registration will be completed by the completion date of this sale. That's all above board. But again, a solicitor can check that for you.
So as long as that registration is completed before the sale, so they wouldn't be able to enforce the completion date then on the basis that that would extend automatically because they're not actually in a position to.
No, indeed. And those buyers, those cash buyers in that case, or traders, should be able, don't always, but they should actually have an expedited land registry registration themselves. So they can pay more money to get that land registry actioned quicker. As I said, don't always do it, but they should do.
Yeah, and
some do, some don't.
And not always that quick either, is it? So
land registry move at land registry pace.
What about pre and post auction offers? What's the general policy around pre? I guess post is a bit more straightforward. Yes. What about pre auction offers?
I mean, we as a company try to do none. Ultimately, as I keep telling my staff, we are auctioneers and we let properties go to the auction room. Some auctioneers will go on a different model. As long as they've got a deal done, they're happy to do a deal. But ultimately, we want to put the property in the room, whether online or real room, just let people, and it's clean, it's easy. If we get an offer pre-auction, we'll always advise the seller. It may occasionally mean we have to adjust our guide price and reserve, because if you get an offer come in one above the guide price, but the seller decides to reject it, we have to raise the reserve price to match that offer. So sometimes making an offer on a property prior to an auction, all you're doing is raising the seller's expectations and raising the reserve price. But we do our very best to dissuade sellers from ever accepting an offer prior, except in situations where a property's been through an auction before and it's being reoffered for a second time, in which case we may well then say, it's been through an offer once, the auction was before, this offer now matches where our guideline or our recommendations were, or matches the previous reserve, whatever, we advise in this case now you take it. And if you do a pre or post auction deal, it should always be on the basis of an auction contract. So you're buying it as if you were buying it in a room. So you never buy it subject to contract.
And then on the back end, then post offer, what are you seeing a lot of offers coming in, and generally how does that work?
We're probably not seeing as many actually. I mean, that's one thing that as an auctioneer, it's a tricky one because we fail to sell about 20% of what we offer, 20, maybe even 25%. So we sell 75% or so of what we offer. So there's a quarter of the properties haven't sold. So there's deals to be done after the auction. Now, when I was on the rostrum, I would have a queue of people afterwards. What can I buy lot 25? What can I buy lot 33 for? What's this available at? And you would do deals immediately after. You get offers and you put the offers forward. That happens a lot less with online. And we've captured people's data. So we know that there were 15 people registered for this lot. 10 of them hadn't given us a bit of security, but 5 of them were ready to go. We didn't get close to the room. So we'll email them, we'll contact them. But bizarrely, I feel it's bizarre anyway, we do very few deals with those people post-auction. I think post-auction is a great time to pick up good deals. So let's say, lot 50 was reserved at £150,000, bidding got to £146,000, failed to sell. If I was bidding on that, and if I'd made a bid of 140, I'd be phoning the auctioneer the next day and say, yeah, I bid 140, but actually I got this carried away. I'll do 130 and I'll exchange contracts now. Just chance it. Worst thing you can say is no. I'd rather have a low offer than no offer at all. And the amount of people that say, well, I bid 146. No, I don't want it now. But you bid that yesterday. No, I didn't mind. You're willing to buy that yesterday, but not today. So again, I have a habit of saying the more I do this job, the less I understand it. I think it's human nature.
Well, this is the bit that kind of intrigues me around the psychology of it all. How does that even make sense?
Yeah, you wanted it yesterday, but not today.
And is that because, I didn't sell for that? In which case, am I doing the right thing? And then you start second guessing yourself and going, actually, yeah, I did the right thing by not buying it. I got away. So yeah, bizarre. Awesome. Are you seeing in regards to financing purchases at auction? How many, I don't know if you know the percentage of people who actually buy with cash versus how many buy with finance, short-term finance or whatever?
I think it's probably something like 30% of people needing some sort of finance. And that's purely kind of anecdotal, my feelings. But very, very few buy on a buy-to-let mortgage, but some will raise cash of some sort in the short term, whether it's bridging finance or something. But we probably, if we sell 100 lots, we probably only have valuers turning up, wanting to borrow keys on 2 or 3 of those lots to value them for a buy-to-let mortgage.
And this is one of the things that we see, we get a lot of people, I bought this at auction, and they come to us after they've won it, the same as you can imagine. I've had the conversation went like this, I'm interested in this property at auction. All right, great. Yeah, we can help. I need bridging finance. Great. When's the auction? It was last week. And you're like, what? Won the auction? You haven't even considered how you're going to finance it. It's just absolutely wild. So you're already behind the ball game then, and trying to get and we did it, but it turned out there was just a hell of a lot of fees that he had to pay that he wasn't aware of, which meant he was only really going to break even. And then at that point, the conversation was, well, he's like, all these fees. I'm like, well, that's what it is. Special conditions and this, that, and the other. Plus you've got about 5 days to complete. So
I'm sure you'd much rather somebody comes to you and says, Rob, I want to buy some buy-to-let properties, and you can do some work on them. You can get them an offer in principle. Yeah, we can lend you X amount on a 75% loan to value, for example, and they know what they're playing with it. So they know that if they've got a property that is their solicitors checked or their AI tools checked it, they know it's above board, it's that and the other. They come to you and you can deal with that. Okay, you've got 28 days. It's going to be tight. But because I've done the due diligence in advance and I've got enough in principle for you, you can work with it.
The other thing that we talk a lot about is then people come to us and they've bought something at auction with cash. They then reduce the amount of DD that they've done. And so one of the benefits that we suggest is at least by using one, a broker, and two, a lender in the short-term finance, you've got us triaging the deal and sense checking it. Then you've got the lender, their valuer, their underwriter, and their solicitor, all. And people think that it's restrictive. It's not restrictive. Is this property a good deal to buy? You've had so many layers that you've jumped through to highlight things that might not be good with this property. So more sets of eyes on it from a due diligence perspective. Even if you're not buying with cash, even if you do plan with buying cash, there's that, the level of DD is a lot greater, which ultimately is protecting your investment long term, isn't it? So it means you can last longer and buy more property.
Yeah, very definitely.
Paul, I really appreciate your time and conscious that we could probably keep going for ages. So I'm very grateful for your time. It's been a great conversation. Just to kind of cap off then, have you got any top tips that you might share with listeners from your experience within this market?
Yeah, I think one is absolutely something we've touched on, that is do your research, do your due diligence. So that means using Rightmove and other tools to find out what the properties in that area are worth in tip-top condition. Check the legal pack out, use an AI tool or use a solicitor to check it out. If you need finance, speak to a broker beforehand to get offers in principle and know what's going to be required to be able to get that over the line. So do all that research, and there's no excuse to not do that, really. Secondly, spread the net. Rather than if you were looking for a buy-to-let property and you might be looking in the valleys in South Wales, then don't just buy that one because it looks like the best bet in the auction catalogue. If you think it's the best bet, probably so will everybody else. So look at other alternatives as well. There might be properties that are £20,000 more expensive, but are turnkey properties, need nothing doing to them. You can just buy it and put a tenant in that straight away. So have as many options as you possibly can. And then if you go for your option one and you're outbid, and you go for your option two and you're outbid, don't panic buy. I know people that have been really careful and really cautious for a couple of auctions. The third auction they go, and in the end they're just so desperate they just buy anything to get a deal, and then they live to regret it, and they never come back again. We want long-term relationships with clients, so don't panic buy. There's always another one coming along next time.
Don't be a motivated buyer.
Absolutely, yes.
Although as an auctioneer, you probably like we like
motivated buyers. We just don't like. We don't like people getting it wrong.
Yeah, of course. Paul, really helpful. Thank you very much for your time again. Really appreciate it. And see you again soon.
Take care. Bye-bye. Cheers.
What an episode. And hopefully if you are interested in buyer auctions, that'll give you great insight into some lessons. And if you're an experienced buyer, hopefully you've picked up a few tips there. And, just to reiterate Paul's 3 tips is, do your research, do your due diligence up front, spread your net wide and look for more than just the one property that you're looking for at that particular auction. And if you are unsuccessful with your first 1, 2, 3 auctions, don't just panic buy and buy anything for the sake of it. So if you do want to learn more about Paul Fosh Auctions and how you can connect with them, the details are in the show notes. And ultimately, the best auction investors aren't the fastest bidders, they're the ones that are the most prepared. So hopefully you enjoyed that episode. If you did, then please like, share, and send us any questions or feedback. We really value it, so please do send them. No questions are silly or anything like that. Please ping them over to us. We'd be delighted to share those with you. And we look forward to seeing you on the next episode. Thank you so much for listening to our podcast. We hope you have learned something and have some tips to take away. We'd be very grateful if you enjoyed the show. You could give us a review and share with anyone that you know that may be interested. And of course, subscribe to the show so you can get notified when a new episode is released. If you'd like us to answer any questions or go deeper on a specific topic, please drop us a message at primeproperty.finance. See you on the next episode.